everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, the DRF race of the day for Tuesday, October the 17th. Race number 9 at Parx. Let's throw up the field for the MP Ballezzi Appreciation Mile. This is a really nice race, Mike. $75,000 is the purse, but you've got Grade 1 winner Doppelganger in here. Nimitz Class, the number 2, took down a very big scalp on the Pennsylvania Derby undercard when he beat Breeders' Cup bound Gunite in the Parx Dirt Mile. And there are several other solid runners in here.
Yeah, it is. It is overall. It's a pretty strong field, and I realize that, as you've already pointed out, Doppelganger is a Grade 1 winner, Dan. But I don't think he's the horse to beat in this race. I think the horse that beats the morning line favorite, the 2 Nimitz Class. This horse has run 3 triple-digit buyers already this year. Nobody else in this entire big field has ever approached that level.
He's just a hardy horse. He seems to dance every dance. This will be his 9th start of 2023. He already has 5 wins. Let's see where he'll be on our Timeform US pace projector. And he's tactical. He's likely going to sit in mid-pack or so. And I do agree with Timeform US that the 3 Awfully Cool is going to try to carry that speed. The 1 is stretching out in distance. No Sabe Nada. He's more of a stalking type. Don't Mesa with Me is stretching out. I think this pace will be honest.
Yeah, I didn't think it necessarily had to get, super heated, but I didn't think they're going to be walking either. So I'll agree with you there, Dan. And I did see the 3 Awfully Cool just because he's drawn sort of inside the other faster horses. I think that horse could make the lead in here.
Now, if the pace is fast, you're going to want to keep an eye on the number 7, Be Better, who has that LP flag over his chiclet. That indicates he has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating, and that horse does roll on in the stretch. But we'll start things off with No Sabe Nada coming into this race off a victory in a expensive restricted allowance for Delaware Certified, going 3/4 of a mile. We see him on the outside. He's this huge horse. He always has these problems with his lead changes. You see him hanging on his left lead, but he gets it done here. I'm a little concerned about him going 2 turns. His best races have come sprinting.
I kind of had the same concerns about him. I like him as a horse overall. I do think he's probably going to get a good trip in this race. And I realized, Dan, 3 starts back, Delaware, 2-turn route. He wins that race. He wins it easily. It's a career best figure for him. I didn't love that field that he beat that day. I still kind of feel like he's better going shorter. But he should be able to get the mile if he gets the right trip in here, and I don't think he's impossible.
Nimitz Class, the number 2, reeled off 5 in a row from the end of 2022 into the spring of this year. Then he ran a solid second in the Salvatore Mile, and he got back on the beam after 3 straight runner-up efforts. This is the Parx Dirt Mile, as you see, on a very wet track. And I think Paco Lopez won this race on the backstretch, Mike, when he took this horse off the inside, got him comfortable outside of Gunite, and runs him by despite being on his left lead for most of the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did get a really good trip in this race. He's out finishing a really good horse here, Dan. Although, listen, maybe Gunite's just better going shorter. It doesn't really want the 2 turns. I think that could be a viable excuse for him, but still, I don't think it really diminishes what this horse did. That was a good performance. His form overall this year is just absolutely rock solid. He just shows up every single time. He gets good trips in his races. His best race is probably too good for these horses. We'll see if he runs it.
The 3 Awfully Cool looks like our projected pace setter from Timeform US, and he was on the lead turning into the stretch at a very short price last time out. This is a high-level allowance, Mike, and I know he had to be pressing the pace in between horses for the first half mile, but when you open up a clear lead like this at the 8th pole at 1-5, you got to win, right?
Yeah, you can't really lose this race. This is not a very good loss for this horse. This was basically over all through the stretch, Dan, and somehow he's just not going to make it to the wire here. Pretty disappointed. He still ran well. It's another one. It's a new top figure for him. So he's just headed in the right direction. Getting back to dirt was a good thing for him. I mean, listen, can he win this race? I think that he can. I didn't really want to take him off that last one.
Kendrick Carmouche is an aggressive jockey. He is going to likely send Awfully Cool to the lead. He's very lightly raced compared to some of the others, so it's possible we haven't seen his best, and he's pretty consistent. He's usually there or thereabouts and occasionally runs big races. So if you think he can get to the lead and back down the fractions, there are some things to like. Don't Mesa with Me is up next, and he's going to be sprinting from going sprint to route. He finished 3rd last time out at Pimlico, Mike. That was a wet track and was a very speed-favoring track. I think it worked against him.
Yeah, maybe he had an excuse for that one. You still have several other races prior to that one, Dan, that you got to be at least a little concerned about. This horse is on a pretty long losing streak heading into this race, and it's not like this race, came up with some kind of soft field. This is actually a very strong field for this kind of race. He's just hard to take based on what he's been doing lately.
He has a little bit of back class, but it's worth noting that his one win at a mile came going the one turn mile at Laurel. He might be more effective going one turn. Magic Michael is up next. Now, you could make the argument that this horse is more effective going longer because he pulled off a win in the Grade 3 Greenwood Cup back in 2021, going a mile and a half. He likely needed his last race. He got a very late start to this year, Mike, off of a lengthy layoff. He really didn't fire his best shot, but that was a good group of allowance horses in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean that just seems like one that you have to be willing to give this horse, especially if he's in that 8 or 10-1 range. Now that was a really long layoff. Your point's well taken about the Greenwood Cup win two years ago. He ran well in that race again last year, going a mile and a half. But you know what? His form going shorter is just fine. He's going to be somewhere off the pace in this race. If they go in front of him a little bit, I expect he's going to take a step forward in this race, and I think he can be there at the end.
He goes out for high percentage trainer Jamie Ness. Again, should be sharper for his second start back and might get the right race flow. No Salt is up next. And speaking of long distance races, he's cutting all the way back from a mile and a half off turf heat in which he got to a pretty easy early lead, but he's already been collared by a horse with a lot of stamina, Serifos. And it's a little disappointing that he doesn't hold second.
It might be, but I mean, this is one of those situations there where I would say that he's probably a horse who, stretching out to a mile and a half, it probably didn't help this horse. I don't really feel like he wanted to go that far. Shorter's better for him. I'm a big fan of this horse. He's actually run some really nice races along the way. He was pretty competitive in New York in some relatively tough races earlier on in his career. This horse is pretty good. I still think he's in tough in this race.
What I like about him, though, is his versatility. He's shown that he can rate and finish, and I think that's what's going to be the tactics that the connections have planned for him on Tuesday in that last race. It was worth knowing. He kind of took a little bobble coming out of the gate, then rushed up before setting that uncontested pace. But you're right, a mile and a half likely too far. I think you can make the argument that the 7B Better is, if not among the best closers in this field. He's a horse that's shown good maturity in 2023 for Brittany Russell. He reeled off 3 in a row. And last time out in the Polynesian, I think some things worked against him. It was a very slow pace. He was sort of at the back. The winner shot up the inside while he went 4 wide.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you that he might be the best closer in this race, Dan. I think that alone makes him dangerous. I kind of wonder if the mile might be a little bit too short for him. Maybe he wants a little bit more distance than this, but listen, this horse started out with some potential for Pletcher. It kind of feels like he never got there, but Brittany Russell's done a great job with this horse. She's gotten him back in form. He's not too far away from the pace in some of those wins recently, so that could work to his advantage as well. I think this horse is pretty dangerous in this race.
It was pouring on the Pennsylvania Derby Saturday at Parx. King Kumbale, though, Butch Reed made the right decision. He stayed in until the very last second. They took the alphabet soup off the turf at the very last second. King Kumbale made hay. It helped that he also got a perfect trip under Abner Adorno, saving ground just about every step of the way and then shooting through an open inside corridor.
This is a good effort from this horse. It is a great trip. It's in the right kind of a spot, but it's still a good effort from this horse. And he ran well 2 starts back then when he was in against Nimitz Class. I mean, I don't think he ran quite as well as Nimitz Class did that day, but this horse ran fine in that race, making up ground all through the stretch in there. That was a good performance. He feels like he's in really good form right now.
Doppelganger, we mentioned, is a Grade 1 winner. He upset the Carter earlier this year when making a big rallying sweep from behind a fast pace going 7/8 of a mile. Then he was overmatched in the Metropolitan Handicap. He came back in a very short field, the Battery Park at Delaware, and he was better than an okay horse riding with Biden that day. His most recent start, the Charlestown Classic, I think is just a throwout. Some horses hate Charlestown. When I talked to Brittany Russell, she said Doppelganger liked nothing about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold that race against him. It's obviously also pretty easy to give him a pass for the Met Mile. 3 starts back. In between, that race was fine, getting the job done at Delaware Park in a very short field. He ran okay in that race, though. He's another one, and I kind of wonder what is he best at? Is he best sprinting around one turn? Is he fine going longer? I mean, I think there are some races that suggest that he is fine going longer. I don't know, Dan. I was sort of torn with this one. I didn't know what I wanted to do with him. And just because he's not going to be a great price in this race, I kind of leaned away. I won't be surprised when he wins.
And if you're looking for a likable horse at a big price who in pretty good form. Here's Genghis stepping up out of an $8,000 starter allowance race. This is his most recent effort, going 7/8 of a mile. And Genghis has things in control, it looks like, turning into the stretch, Mike. He's just not able to conquer this group in the stretch. He's a likable sort, but taking a big step up in class, a step up in distance, it might be a little bit out of his reach.
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him as a horse. It feels like they're throwing him into a pretty tough spot in this race, Dan. I don't see the race that he's run in the past that's going to make him a serious contender in here.
And as for the also eligibles, they look like in a similar vein as Genghis in that they're probably in a little bit too tough against this field if they happen to get into the body of the race. Before we get to our top selection, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time for the MP Ballezzi Appreciation Mile. Nimitz class has just been in excellent form all season long, and they found the right spots for him most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might have found another good spot for him here, Dan. I just think he's just rock solid in this race. I think there's a good trip coming from him, and maybe his best race is just too good for these horses. I'm going to take him on top in this race. I put Magic Michael second just because I felt like he really likes Parx. I think this is a good distance for him, second off the layoff now, and he's going to be a fair price in here.
I put Awfully Cool second. I know his last race was a disappointing loss, but his speed, I think, should play well in here. And I do think there's a little bit of upside. He's got to be a good price, and he looks like the controlling pace. 2,587 for Mike, 2,387 for me. Good race at Parx on Tuesday. The Ballezzi Appreciation Mile. Best of luck.